Welcome to another episode of Rim Shots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And I have via my friend Christina Avila, uh, my new friend Rafe Klein with the band, The Name Droppers. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And thank
Um,
you, Christina.
yes, I believe I'm friends on Facebook with your drummer.
Bobby T.
Yeah, he's quite the dude. He always has some nice posts and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
got the CD. Christina sent me a bunch of stuff. Great band. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you guys?
Well, we're pretty much a studio band. We got together in the studio about 5 years ago, but we've been playing out as well. And we've recorded 4 albums together. This is our fourth. It's called Starshine. And the drummer is who you mentioned, Bobby T. Torello. He used to play with Johnny Winter, Michael Bolton, Grace Slick. The bass player is a Grammy Award winning bass player, Scott Spray, who also played with Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter. And the other two is Ron Rifkin and myself. Ron Rifkin's a keyboard player, and I'm the guitar player.
Um, every time I talk to people, in particular south of the border, it just seems like the bands they get configurations together that are I never like to use the term superpower because sometimes you put this big connotation, but just players that have been around with A-listers. And you guys are no exception. How did this come about?
Well, the name droppers is
Well, no,
that
just how you get those two guys from those bands that had played with some bigger people, and then did you know them previously? How did that work?
yeah, I know of them, you know. First time I saw Scott Spray was I went to see Johnny Winter. Johnny Winter is he lived in Connecticut. He
Okay.
lived in Easton, Connecticut, originally from Texas, but he lived in Connecticut. And Scott was the bass player in his band. And about, I don't know, 10 years ago, Johnny Winter was playing on a boat. I went to go see him. It was a booze cruise, you know. And I went to see Johnny, and I couldn't take my eyes off the bass player. Just he was fantastic, and that was Scott Spray. So um, I was working. This is how it really got started. Back in 2016, 17, Ronnie and I, the keyboard player, were working with Charlie Karp. Charlie Karp was a well-established, well-known guitar player, also in Connecticut, and he was the main guy in our band. It was called Charlie Karp and the Name Droppers, and he started that name after he was on tour with Buddy Miles, opening up for Hendrix. So to make a long story short, they were in the studio and we were in the studio, and they ended up playing on Charlie's final album. And Charlie passed away in 2019, but we kept the band together, and we sort of became our own unit post Charlie. And Johnny Winter passed away probably 3 years prior to that happening.
Well, it's a great name, because it's one of those things where, the connotation, you're a name dropper. Like, and I mean, I don't know what it means to you, but I mean, to me, I get kind of the vision of, you guys use some of your, I guess, connections to, for a networking further the cause type thing, and obviously good players in your own right because I've heard the CD. Um, is there a little tinge of that when you came up with the name, or was it just a play on words?
The name came up some 40 some odd years ago when Charlie Karp came back to Connecticut. He was on tour with Buddy Miles. He was opening up for Buddy Miles. You know, them changes, my mind is going,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And so he was on that album, and he came back to Connecticut, and they ended up starting a band with some other guys that played with Jose Feliciano. These were name droppers,
Right,
right? He
right.
played with Buddy Miles. He opened up for Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, he actually performed at Jimi Hendrix's funeral. Charlie did with the
Wow.
Buddy Miles band. So that was the name of it back then. And it wasn't until 2018 until we were recording with Charlie. I had been working with Charlie, but he played under different names, and it wasn't always called Charlie Karp and the Name Droppers. And when we released an album in 2019, our producer said, well, what's the name of the band? And Charlie said, well, we used to go by the Name Droppers. So it was Charlie Karp and the Name Droppers. And Scott Spray and Bobby T ended up joining the band. And so when he passed away, we just kept the name. We took Charlie's name off it. So it's just called the Name Droppers.
So you mentioned it was a studio band. Now you're playing. How long have you been doing that, and what was the reason for the transition? Did you just feel that people needed to hear this music live? You wanted to
Yeah,
do it live. That was what was the transition?
yeah, yeah. We wanted to. Um, and yeah, when we come out with new music, we go out and we play for people. And some of the songs stay as sort of regulars in the set. And when we bring new songs in, it's funny, every time we do another album, we'll play the whole album, but there'll be like two or three that'll kind of stay in the set after that album kind of, fades away.
Sure.
And so we keep doing that. We play some originals, but I mean we play some covers, but mostly originals, which is not what the live music scene calls for. I don't know about where you are, but where I am, all people want to do is they want to hear what's called tribute bands, not cover bands, but tribute bands.
Yep.
And so we're sort of unpopular, but that's okay. That's what we do, and that's what we want to do.
It's interesting because the tribute create, and I like when you do the air quotes. That really hasn't hit up here. It is more cover, and we have kind of a Celtic flair sometimes to our. I'm a rock guy, and I have two bands that are rock bands, and I work with an artist that's rock. But for the tribute, because I've talked to a lot of people in your area, and two things that I sort of knew because I have family connections down there is the amount of talent in the state of Connecticut is very very high, but the whole tribute band and how it's really kind of elevated over the original band. So I mean, talk about those two things just I guess a little bit.
I don't know what to say other than that's what people like. I think I can relate to it, not as an artist or not as an original music creator, but
Right.
as a fan. You're drawn to something that's familiar to you and it's going to bring you back to a certain place. And you don't care who it is, as long as they're doing it this way and they're doing that thing, that what they're used to hearing. And so there's a big market for it. Um,
I find when I go out and I see original bands, I find the stuff that I wouldn't normally listen to is the stuff that I'm drawn to maybe a little bit more. Um, Case in point, I don't consider myself a prog rock fan. I respect it, but I wouldn't sit down and listen to it. In the summer, I found a band in these parts as a prog rock band. I just fell in love with them. Do you find that yourself? I mean, how many original bands are kind of pounding around your circuit down there?
yeah, personally, I support original music and also being in the studio a lot. Um, I see a lot of I get to know when they're playing, or I see them in the studio, and I become friends with a lot of these people. So I go. That's what I do, and there are some original bands that I really like around here. Um, Not to say
So
I wouldn't enjoy a tribute band, but I can't remember the last time I went out of my way to see one. If I saw one, it was by accident. It was when
yeah.
somebody was doing a show with them.
I think because of what I do in my hometown, I kind of get drawn in. It's weird. The cover bands, they kind of deal with me a little bit, even though I'm kind of in their realm a bit. The original bands, not so much. I have to kind of seek them out because I think they think that I'm only supporting the cover circuit, which I'm not. I like to support all music, and it's really funny how there's such a divide between those two things, right? Is it the same thing in your area?
Yeah, yeah. There is there's a scene. There's a live music scene, but the bigger shows are the tribute acts. But there was just a concert that they had right here in Bridgeport called Sound on Sound or Sound Festival, and that was fantastic. And that was big name artists. The Foo Fighters were supposed to be there, but they canceled at the last minute. But the Google Dolls were there. Jack White was there. Um, so that was a little bit different. But I went to that, and that was great.
I saw something about that today, but Dave had to get his crap together with his family, so he decided to go to the show or something, is what I heard.
Yeah, some people were not happy about that because a lot of
Yeah,
people bought tickets or came to this area specifically to see the Foo Fighters.
yeah.
I was looking forward to seeing them, but there were other acts that I wanted to see, Teddy Swims and some of the other um, singers and acts. And I was looking forward to the whole show. So for me, it wasn't a game changer, but for some people, they seem to be really pissed off about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I always like to ask this question when I talk to people from that are in, different parts of the world. And when everything was shut down, and I constantly heard, because my podcast is basically a COVID thing that happened just because. And I kept hearing, oh, things open up, we'll never take music for granted again. And I kept saying, I really hope not. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, it might happen. Do you see any of that where you are? Do you sometimes see that people are maybe not going to shows or not supporting things just because they don't feel like going?
No, no, and in fact, I do feel like since the pandemic, there is this appreciation for music, and the price has gone up,
Yeah.
and I don't think that that's faded away. I don't feel like that. I feel like there's still a big market for people to go to shows, and they buy shows in advance, and you know, whether it's a tribute band or it's an original band, I don't see that people are taking it for granted. I
You,
think
you,
people are paying a lot more for music and for live shows than they ever have.
you
But
just
I
brought
mean,
up you brought up something interesting, Rafe, because you mentioned people are buying advance tickets. Are you seeing that in your area? Because up here, it seems to be one of the biggest issues that promoters bring up is the fact that advance tickets are never high. It's always day of and week before and that type of thing. You're seeing a lot of advance sales?
yeah, I mean, it's not like it's taken over. There's still that where people are going to wait to the last minute, or maybe
Yeah.
they'll buy tickets at the door. But yeah, I'm seeing that for shows that I may just go to, or for some of the shows that we have. People are buying advance tickets.
So the name droppers, how much are you guys playing? I mean, 2024, I was thinking about it today. We're about 2.5 months and it's done and we're into 2025. But what do you have for the rest of the year and what's next year going to look for like for you guys?
Well, we have one show coming up. We'll probably have one more show before the end of the year. It's going to be in October, and it's going to be this concert series. It's called Vine and Vibes Concert Series, and they do that on a Sunday at a new winery in North Haven, Connecticut. It's called Small Batch Cellars. So we'll be performing some songs from our new album and some of the others there. And then as we get into Christmas season, we probably will go into the studio and work on new material.
Uh, in terms of radius and stuff, because there's different sorts of things in different areas. But in terms of radius, what's your footprint for going out and playing? Like, do you guys do a full like 2 weeks, or do you do scattered shows here and there? What's your typical MO?
Yeah, scattered shows here or there. We live in Connecticut, which we're not far from New York City,
Yeah.
but up in the New Massachusetts and the New England area, we'll play there. But we don't really go too much further than that.
Well, you're in a good spot because you can hit an awful lot of geography from where you are and really not have to, drive 14, 15 hours, right?
Right. Yeah. There's not a lot of traveling, and we don't have a tour bus. Now, if something came up that made sense where we could do that and we could fit it in, sure. But that's not really something that we've done. And I don't even know if that's something that we're looking for unless it was the right fit. We like to be close to the studio where we can release music, we can get the music out to radio DJs, especially blues DJs all over the country. And
Nice.
so we'll continue to do that. As we have a new album, we'll do a bunch of shows, and it could be further than I talked about, or just around New England.
So it seems to be a trend, and I would be caught up in the trend. I'd be guilty if I didn't say it. Where people playing more than one project, and it's because maybe they have a recording project that maybe plays a handful of shows a year. They want to be busy. Do you guys have other things on the go besides the name droppers, or is the name droppers your number one focus?
Me personally, the name droppers is my number one focus. Um, and I would say that the other guys, it's right up on the top of the list, but let's let's call it what it is. These are professional musicians, these are studio musicians,
Mhm.
and they're at high demand. So I wouldn't say that they're in a bunch of bands, but they're busy.
Right.
Some of them could be working 5 or 6 days a week, either in the studio or doing other gigs with other guys. But that's what it would be. It would be another gig. I have a couple of bands that I do that with. I consider it to be, a gig. But my main project, and I think the whole everybody feels the way that our main project and we're dedicated to the name droppers.
Well, it's good that you can have that because it can become difficult if you're trying to deal with multiple schedules that are all kind of intersecting and crossing over, and it becomes problematic, especially if it gets into situations where you're repeatedly having to reschedule things, right?
Scheduling is one of the most difficult things to do. I'm a
Yeah.
videographer, and trying to see how other bands have to schedule to get me available or them to do it. So it's really hard. But when you have just four guys, and these guys are really flexible, Scott and Ronnie and Bobby, and if something comes up where they're booked, and it made sense, they would consider getting a sub for the other gig sometimes, which is really appreciative. But we work it out. We work it out. We work out through scheduling, and if we have something that comes up, we get it done.
And so the name of the current album is
Starshine.
Starshine, and I heard it sounds great. I was actually listening to some, and Christina sent me some MP3s today, and I was in a place where I could hear it. It sounds great, very blues based, obviously. My
Thank
viewers,
you.
my listeners, where are they going to find out more about the name droppers and how to get a hold of you guys and get your music?
Well, we have a website. It's thenamedroppers.net. You can also check us out on Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. And if you'd like to see some of the videos, we have a YouTube page. You can go to the Name Droppers on YouTube and check us out that way. Or you can, however you stream, if you're a Spotify person or we're on every, obviously, just like any other artist. When you release music to one streaming platform, you're on them all. But it's cool to check out. We got some good, cool videos that you can check out. I encourage anybody that's listening to go check out our website, thenamedroppers.net, and go to our YouTube page.
Rafe Klein, the name droppers. Thanks so much for doing this, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me onto your show.
My pleasure. And don't forget, Rim Shots with Sean. If you like it and subscribe because that's how we do it.
Great.
Peace.
Peace, brother.